I've made it clear I need to make the next step. They're the words of Matheus Cunha in an article by The Guardian today, pretty much making it clear that he wants to move on from Wolves and a transfer now in the summer. If, we already knew it was going to be likely, but it looks pretty much certain that Matheus is going to move on now. And once again, frustrating to read these words mid-season when, to be completely honest, we're not 100% safe, in my opinion. I know, it's going to take a massive swing for us to still get relegated, but there's still work to be done. There's still games to be played. And ultimately, I don't want to be hearing my players, or, players of the club I support, I should say, with words constantly talking about how they want to move on. I just think it's disrespectful to the fans. It's disrespectful to the club. And here we are once again with the story around Matheus Cunha. Now, to be fair to Matheus, the article that was released this morning by The Guardian, written by Tiago Ribeiro, he does have some very sort of complimentary words towards Wolverhampton Wanderers, which is good. I would expect that, and I'll quickly go through the majority of the article with you guys now, and I will talk about his words towards the end about his future at the club in a little bit more detail as well. But as always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let's hit that like button as well and subscribe to Talking Wolves if you haven't already and you're having a great weekend. But in this article, Matheus basically is talking about the affection, and he wants affection as a player. He wants to be loved, basically, and he didn't feel that at Atletico Madrid. He struggled a lot under Diego Simeone. I know at the time there was a lot of toxicity behind the scenes with their fans, and they just really didn't rate him at all. So he came to Wolves wanting that happiness, wanting that love. And of course, from day one, the fans sort of gave it to him. He joined at not a great time, but a good time, because pretty much when he joined similar time to Julian Lopetegui, and the club were just on the up, really. And he's saying that Wolves gave him that joy back. It gave him that enjoyment in football back as well. And he's really complimentary towards Gary O'Neill. Now, look, I think it's easy for us to, and I had this conversation with someone a couple of days ago, I think it's easier for us to jump on the back of Gary O'Neill because ultimately he was very, very poor at the start of this season. He really seemed to be a little sort of out of his depth. But I think we forget he did some good things in that first season. And the togetherness with the squad is something that we hadn't really had pretty much since Nuno had left. And Matheus Cunha has said that. He said, Gary understood me completely. He came in and said, man, I think you're an incredible person, but you need affection. I'm going to give you that affection. I'm going to complain when I need to complain, but I'm almost going to be family for you. And you could see that bond between them. And then towards the end of Gary's tenure, you saw that bond at times sort of disappear. And I think that's when it sort of started to mark the end of Gary O'Neill's time at the club. And then we go on to more things. He talks a lot about Brazil being on national team duty, how it's upsetting that he wasn't really in the fold up until recently. But then we talk about his future at Wolverhampton Wanderers. And the article says this season will almost certainly be Cunha's farewell to Wolves. Apparently, he received a few offers to leave the club in January, one of which was from Arsenal. Now, of course, there was lots of interest or reported interest in January. Arsenal was a club that was strongly linked. There was never really concrete reports of whether he was going to go to a specific club. Of course, clubs like Nottingham Forest were linked as well with their march towards Europe. But it was almost as if Wolves didn't have any acceptable offers, in my opinion, because I think if Wolves got towards that £70+ million mark, they would have probably cashed in January. But he says, I had a lot of offers, but it wouldn't feel well if I had done it. Some things you can't control, but I couldn't leave the club in the middle of a season in a difficult situation in the relegation zone. Okay, fair enough, thank you. Now we're close to achieving our goal. The key word in this is we're close. We haven't done it. There's still football to be played. We're close to achieving our goal of staying up. I've made it clear that I need to take the next step. I want to fight for titles. I want to fight for big things. I have potential. Now, there is no denying the quality that Matheus Cunha has got. I think he's a phenomenal player. Some will label him one of, if not the best players to have played for Wolves in this modern era. But I just think, for me, this is frustrating. Things like this, you just don't mention. And it's becoming frustrating now, and maybe it's just because of the modern day football and agent and player power. and the idea that you could speak to the press to get your thoughts out. Everybody knew that Matheus Cunha was more than likely going to be moving on in the summer. But what you still want is a little bit of respect. If you are asked these sort of questions, you say, I have no... Well, I don't know. I say, I just want to focus on my football. This is the situation we can look at when the season ends. Full stop, end of paragraph, end of article, end of story. But the fact that you're still, again, wanting interest, and in my opinion, this is disrespectful towards Wolves, who've given him a chance, obviously given him a new contract on much better terms, a contract that suits predominantly Matheus, to be honest. The only way it suited Wolves was just to make sure he stayed for another 6 months or so. I'm just a little bit disappointed and a little bit frustrated with this article, to be honest. And it's not what I want to be seeing from a player who ultimately let his players, his peers, the fans and the club down just a couple of weeks ago in the FA Cup. We could have been playing this weekend in the FA Cup. If Matheus hadn't have been sent off in that game, it could have been a different story. It was just stupidity. And I don't know, maybe I'm acting on emotion a little bit now and, going a bit over the top. But I probably, once he's available after the Ipswich game, if we get points this week against West Ham and Ipswich and pretty much secure our safety, I wouldn't be rushing to get him back in the lineup. I would be fully focusing on the players that want to be at this football club and will be here at this football club next season. And that stands for Nelson Semedo, who hasn't disrespected the club as such. But if he wants to move on next season and won't sign a new contract, if the club are looking to give him a new deal, I think you have to start giving opportunities more to the likes of Pedro Lima, maybe Rodrigo Gomez if he wants to be taking up that right wing back role. I think we have to be doing that with one eye on next season. Try and bed these players in, get a little bit of momentum, see what they're good at, what they need to improve on throughout pre-season, rather than prioritising players like Matheus Cunha, who ultimately does not care about the long-term future of Wolverhampton Wanderers and no doubt will be moving on. Rant over. Let me know your thoughts. I'll make sure I leave a link to the Guardian article down below as well if you want to read it for a bit more context. But like I said, complimentary towards Wolves at the start, which I can't complain about. But I just think, for me, it's a little bit disrespectful to the club when you're touting yourself and your services out before the season and before, in my opinion, the job is even done. As always, hit that like button down below, guys. Subscribe to the channel. We'll be back for some pre-match West Ham content in the next day or so. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, though, and I'll catch you on the next one.